Hello, thank you for coming today. I want to talk about the elephant in the room, cannabis. It's the bread and butter that sustains the war on drugs. Cannabis is the most commonly used illegal drug, used by an estimated 4% of the global adult population. That is 166 million people out of approximately 200 million users of all illegal drugs. It therefore constitutes roughly 80% of the illegal drug market, and yet it is barely mentioned at official meetings. Of these 160 million users, at most only 10% experience any harms, and yet this is the drug that sustains the war on drugs. If it were removed from the system, what would be left? The 1% of the global population that uses the other illegal drugs. This is too small a number to warrant the vast costs in money and human suffering of waging this unwinnable war. Perhaps it is the realization of this that makes the UN so determined to keep cannabis within the system. It was in recognition of the fact that cannabis is virtually ignored at official meetings that led me to seek out the most respected drug policy analysts in the world. I asked them to write a report summarizing the latest scientific evidence on all matters relating to cannabis, thereby giving policymakers and the public an up-to-date, authoritative overview of the harms of cannabis use, of the harms arising from the laws seeking to control its use, and of alternative ways forward. I am delighted and grateful for the scholarly work that the authors of the report have produced. We end the report with conclusions and recommendations of various ways in which individual countries can move beyond the current stalemate, ways which Robin Room and Peter Reuter will explain to you in more detail. Cannabis has been used for spiritual and medicinal purposes around the world since records began. In India, for instance, it has for thousands of years been associated with the god Shiva and is still used by Brahmins and sadhus today. However, when in 1961 it was added to the schedule of prohibited substances, it was little used in the developed world, except by a few avant-garde musicians and artists. Since then, despite prohibition, its use has exploded, so that now it is part of the youth culture in most developed countries. What emerges clearly from our report is that, 1, the harms from smoking cannabis are minimal in comparison with the harms of most other recreational drugs, whether legal or illegal. 2, that which is prohibited cannot easily be regulated. 3, policy, whether draconian or liberal, has little effect on prevalence of use. 4, the harms caused by the criminalization of cannabis are disproportionate, in part due to the damage it causes to those caught up in the system. In the US alone, there are 750,000 cannabis arrests every year, and in part because it increasingly adds to the profit of criminal cartels, which contribute to the destabilization of producer and transit countries. Mexico is an outstanding example of this. To sum up, the current system not only infringes the human rights of millions of users who cause little or no trouble to society, but most importantly, it discriminates against minorities and the poor and ruins lives. It also leads to the corruption of police and politicians in countries caught up in the unwinnable war on drugs. The author.